Well, I'm completely confident with at least one prediction. They're definitely gonna go back to ending the night with Best Picture. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about my picks and predictions for this year's Oscars. There are 53 films nominated across 23 categories, and just like last year, I had the opportunity to see every nominee. There was one film that was cutting it a bit close, but it finally got a release a few days ago, so I was able to see it. I do my Oscar predictions a little differently than most people, so I want to explain what I'm going to do here. Basically, for each category, I'm going to give you two picks. The first is my personal pick. It's the choice that I think was the best or most deserving, and would be my vote if I actually had a vote. The second pick that I'm going to give is the choice that I think will actually win. This will take into account not only the quality of the film, but also other contributing factors, like the demographic makeup of the voting body or current events. So basically, this is a should win, will win scenario. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. Remember, these are just my predictions, so be sure to post your own personal predictions for the 2022 Oscars in the comments below. I've already reviewed some of these movies on this channel, so if you want to check those out for some more in-depth thoughts on each of them, I'll put links in the description below, and I'll also link some of them up in the cards as we go along. Alright, let's get into these predictions. We'll go in the order that the categories were presented in last year, with the exception of Best Picture, which we'll do last, as it should have been. I'll put chapter shortcuts in the description to make it a bit easier to navigate. Original Screenplay. The nominees are Belfast, Don't Look Up, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, and The Worst Person in the World. So unlike last year, I gotta say that I'm not particularly impressed with the nominees for this category overall. I like some of the films, but from a screenplay and even story perspective, I thought there were other films more deserving of nominations this year. With that said, of the actual nominees, two screenplays positively stood out from the rest for me. I thought King Richard was fairly interestingly designed for a biopic, but I have to go with Belfast for my personal pick in this category. As a film, I liked King Richard more, but Belfast did a great job of telling its personal story, because it's presented through this memory perspective of a kid, so it focuses on things you wouldn't necessarily expect. For the actual winner, I honestly think all but Don't Look Up are in the running, but I've gotta give the edge to Belfast, again for that unique perspective of a very personal story. Adapted Screenplay. The nominees are Coda, Drive My Car, Dune, The Lost Daughter, and The Power of the Dog. For me, this is always one of the tougher categories to predict, because it's hard to tell how the voters are going to approach it. Are they going to select the best adaptation, or are they just going to select the best screenplay that happens to have been adapted? For me, Dune is the only nominee whose original source material I've actually read, so I've got to approach this category more from the best screenplay side rather than the best adaptation side. And so for my personal pick, I've got to go with Coda. Unfortunately, I think it has a very slim chance of actually winning, and I think The Power of the Dog is going to end up taking it. International Feature Film. The nominees are Drive My Car for Japan, Flee for Denmark, The Hand of God for Italy, Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom for Bhutan, and The Worst Person in the World for Norway. This was a very unusual set of nominees this year. Some of these make sense as Oscar contenders, but a few of them? And it's pretty weird, because there were a lot of great international films this year. Petite Maman, Parallel Mothers, Out of Sync, I'm Your Man, Compartment Number 6, all better than half the nominees we ended up getting. It is pretty cool that Bhutan got its first nomination, though. So, as you could probably tell, I wasn't really blown away by any of these, but my personal pick goes to The Worst Person in the World. I do think that it's a minor contender to actually win, but it's not likely, because Drive My Car is steamrolling over everything this year, and is sure to have the Oscar too. Actor in a supporting role. The nominees are Ciarán Hinds in Belfast, Troy Kotsur in Coda, Jesse Plemons in The Power of the Dog, J.K. Simmons in Being the Ricardos, and Cody Smith-McPhee in The Power of the Dog. So I always think the lead actor categories are tough to judge, but the supporting categories are even harder for me. There's just something extra challenging about comparing these nominees, and that has not changed this year. Usually, though, there's one or two standouts to me, but I feel like this year's selection is pretty evenly balanced. However, of the nominees, my personal pick would be Troy Kotsur for Coda. And while I do think Cody Smith-McPhee has a shot at taking home the Oscar, I think Troy Kotsur is going to actually win as well. Not only did he give an emotional and funny performance, but this would be some Oscar history here. If he were to win, he would be only the second deaf nominee to ever win an Oscar, after Marlee Matlin won in 1987. Makeup and hairstyling. The nominees are Coming to America, Cruella, Dune, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and House of Gucci. I'm a little underwhelmed by the nominees in most categories this year, but this is one that I'm actually pleasantly surprised by. Can I just say how happy I am that Coming to America got an Oscar nomination? It's a worthy nominee for this category, but I definitely didn't expect to see it on the list. But as excited as I am for that nomination, I'm even more excited to see my top pick make an appearance, and that is Cruella. So that's obviously my personal pick, but I'm gonna go with it for the win too. I realize it's probably a long shot and that The Eyes of Tammy Faye and Dune are more obvious picks, but I don't know. I'm feeling Cruella. Costume design. The nominees are Cruella, Cyrano, Dune, Nightmare Alley, and West Side Story. So this is a category that I don't usually get very excited about, but this is the most interested in the category I've been maybe ever. Because the film that most stood out to me for costumes this past year actually got nominated. So for my personal pick, it's a complete no-brainer. Cruella. I mean, the film is literally about fashion design. I always joke that costume dramas are a shoo-in for this category. And if that Oscar trend were to hold true, then Cyrano would get it. I mean, the 1990 Cyrano de Bergerac won the category, but I think we're gonna see something different this year. Even though Cyrano de Bergerac came away with the Oscar in 1990 and 102 Dalmatians lost the category in 2000, this year I think we're gonna see a Cyrano loss and a Cruella win. Directing. The nominees are Kenneth Branagh for Belfast, Ryusuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, and Steven Spielberg for West Side Story. I've alluded to it in a few of the other categories, but this is another kind of underwhelming set of nominees for me, personally. I think the Hamaguchi nomination is interesting, but the rest kind of just feel like obligatory picks based on the films rather than the actual direction. So for my personal pick, I've got to go with Kenneth Branagh and Belfast. This was a very personal story for Branagh, and I think that deeper connection came through in his direction. As far as the actual winner, I think it's going to be a close one. Branagh definitely has a decent shot and might manage to win, but I think Jane Campion is going to come away with it for The Power of the Dog. I don't quite see what most others seem to see with this movie, but I wouldn't be unhappy with a Campion win. It would be some more Oscar history. If she wins, Campion would be only the third woman to ever get Best Director. And this would be the first time we ever get back-to-back female winners, since Chloe Zhao took home the Oscar for Nomadland last year. Sound. The nominees are Belfast, Dune, No Time to Die, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. It's now been 2 years since the sound editing and sound mixing categories were merged into just a single sound category. I didn't like it last year, and I still don't like it this year. They are two very different aspects of sound design that are hard to compare. So I think predicting this category is incredibly hard now. Last year, we had an obvious standout with Sound of Metal, but we don't have that this year. So for my personal pick, I'm gonna go with No Time to Die, because I think he was the best at both editing and mixing. The sound was pretty dynamic, ranging from soft, tender moments to tons of explosions and gunfire. I don't think it's actually gonna win though, and instead, Dune is gonna take home the Oscar. Live action short film. The nominees are Alakashu, Take and Run, The Dress, The Long Goodbye, On My Mind, and Please Hold. Because of their fairly limited availability, the short film nominees tend to be among the most underseen of all of the nominees each year. Of the three shorts categories, live action is probably second to animated in terms of popularity and availability. As I've done the past few years, I do have a ranking of all 5 live action short nominees that you can check out here. This year, I thought 2 nominees were particularly strong. I liked On My Mind for its relative simplicity and its emotional punch, but my personal pick has gotta go to Please Hold, which had a nice balance of humor and message, along with some interesting world building. As far as the actual winner, I think it could go any of 3 ways: Alakachu, The Long Goodbye, or Please Hold. But since I have to pick one, I think The Long Goodbye is gonna take it thanks to its star power and its very prominent message. Animated short film. The nominees are Affairs of the Art, Bestia, Box Ballet, Robin Robin, and The Windshield Wiper. Another short film category, and some more underseen films. Just like with the live action shorts, I have a ranking of all 5 animated shorts nominees that you can check out here for some more in-depth thoughts on each. So, this category. Usually, there's a bit more lightness to the animated nominees when compared to the other 2 shorts categories, but that was not the case this year. This is the first time since 2009 that we don't have a Disney or Pixar short in the running. And with the exception of Aardman's Robin Robin, this is easily the darkest set of nominees I've ever seen. For me, this one is a no-brainer. Robin Robin is my personal pick, and I also think it's going to be the one that has any shot at actually winning. Animated feature film. The nominees are Encanto, Flea, Luca, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and Raya and the Last Dragon. Unlike the animated shorts category, I think this year's set of feature nominees is pretty good. I know these were the 5 best for me, and were the ones I suspected would be nominated. So I liked all of these movies, and really enjoyed 3 of the 5. I had 2 that were in the running in my mind over the year, but after rewatching both of them, I can say that my personal pick is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. That movie was such a pleasant surprise to me, and I connected with it even more on rewatch. I do think The Mitchells vs. the Machines actually has a semi-decent shot at winning, but Encanto has just become this unstoppable force over the last few months, and as the only musical in the bunch, I think it's gonna end up taking home the Oscar. Documentary short subject. The nominees are Audible, Lead Me Home, The Queen of Basketball, 3 Songs for Benazir, and When We Were Bullies. The nominees in this category tend to be a bit hit or miss for me most years, but I was actually fairly impressed across the board this year. You can watch my ranking of all 5 documentary shorts here. For me, there were 2 standouts, Audible and The Queen of Basketball. I really liked both of them, but I'm gonna go with Audible for my personal pick. As far as the actual winner goes, I think it's gonna be a toss-up between those 2 same films. The Queen of Basketball is a bit more feel-good, but I think the emotional and thematic elements of Audible are gonna earn it the Oscar. Documentary feature. The nominees are Ascension, Attica, Flea, Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised, and Writing with Fire. Not that this category is ever typically easy to predict, but this year's nominees are making it a bit more challenging than usual. This was actually the category I was concerned I wouldn't be able to finish. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but there was one movie that was not available anywhere until only a few days ago, and that was Writing with Fire. But it ended up not being my personal pick after all. So for me, it came down to Attica and Summer of Soul. 2 very different movies and very different subjects, but my pick has gotta go to Attica. That one just really struck me when I saw it at TIFF last year. I don't think it's really in the running though, and it's gonna come down to Summer of Soul or Flea. And I think Flea is gonna be the one to actually take it, because it's got the emotional story, is presented in a very unique way as an animated film, and I don't think it really has a shot in the other 2 categories it's nominated for, so I think that's gonna help it out a bit more here with the voters. Visual effects. The nominees are Dune, Free Guy, No Time to Die, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Spider-Man No Way Home. This tends to be one of the most baffling categories to me in terms of nominations, but I think this is one year where they were close to getting it right. Although I think the omission of Godzilla vs. Kong was a mistake, I'm happy to see a movie like Free Guy get Oscar recognition. The visual effects used in these movies are pretty diverse, which makes them a bit tough to compare, but my personal pick would be No Time to Die. Mostly because I think it had the best balance of CG and practical effects. I doubt it's gonna win though. I think most people, general audiences, are probably rooting for Spider Man No Way Home. But the Academy doesn't have the best track record when it comes to choosing a comic book movie in this category. Over the last 20 years, more often than not, we've had at least one comic book movie nominee, but we haven't seen a winner since Spider-Man 2 back in 2004. So No Way Home might have a shot, but I think the Oscar's gonna go to Dune, which I suspect will win most of the visual categories this year. Actress in a supporting role. The nominees are Jessie Buckley in The Lost Daughter, Ariana DeBose in West Side Story, Judi Dench in Belfast, Kirsten Dunst in The Power of the Dog, and Ingenue Ellis in King Richard. Not gonna lie, I think this is kind of an underwhelming set of nominees this year, and I don't really understand the reasoning behind some of the selections. Not that I thought that any of the performances were bad, it's just that most of them didn't strike me as anything. For me, Ingenue Ellis and DeBose were the best, but I think I've got to go with Ariana DeBose for my personal pick, because that performance just stood out more. And I think the Academy is gonna agree with me on this one and give DeBose the Oscar. Production design. The nominees are Dune, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. This is always one of the more interesting categories in my mind. I tend to like production design and find it a very important element in a lot of films. This is also one of those categories that really favors a particular type of film, and that's period pieces. So usually you can kind of discount a few nominees right off the bat, but this year is different because technically they're all period pieces, if you count the future as a period. So that makes this category a tough one this year. Like I said, I like production design, and it tends to be an aspect of film that I notice, and of these films, the one that really stood out to me was Nightmare Alley. So that's my personal pick. As for the actual winner, I honestly think it could go any of the 5 ways and still be a logical choice. I'm gonna predict Nightmare Alley just because that moody, atmospheric quality was so essential to the story, but I think this category is probably the biggest toss-up of any of them. Cinematography. The nominees are Dune, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. Even more so than production design, I love cinematography. It's easily my favorite technical aspect of film, and so I usually really like this category. But I gotta say, I find the nominees a bit underwhelming this year. It's the same exact set of films as production design, and I don't know, none of them really jumped out at me this year. I thought films like Last Night in Soho and The Novice were far more impressive in this department. But of these options, my personal pick has gotta go to Nightmare Alley. However, I think Dune is gonna come away with the Oscar, mostly because of the grandiosity of its visuals. Film editing. The nominees are Don't Look Up, Dune, King Richard, The Power of the Dog, and Tick Tick Boom. I hate to sound like a broken record here, but this is another weird, slightly underwhelming set of nominees for me. Just like with cinematography, I thought there were several films with better editing, like, once again, Last Night in Soho and The Novice. But of the actual nominees, I guess I gotta go with Tick Tick Boom for my personal pick. It was pretty creative, though probably a little too frenetic and busy to actually win, though not as bad on that front as Don't Look Up. But instead, I think Dune is probably gonna come away with the Oscar. Original score. The nominees are Don't Look Up, Dune, Encanto, Parallel Mothers, and The Power of the Dog. This category is tough this year. I'll admit that I don't love any of the scores, but I also don't dislike any of them. So they're all kind of at an equal level for me. But they're also all different, yet perfectly fitting for their individual movies. After the nominees were announced, I spent half a day listening to all of these scores, and was surprised to find that my personal pick is actually Don't Look Up. The movie was kind of to me, but there was just something about the electronic infused, slightly jazzy score that stood out to me. I doubt it's gonna win though. The Power of the Dog is a possibility, as is Encanto, whose strength lies in its music, but I think Dune is gonna win it. I mean, it's Hans Zimmer, and of all of the nominees this year, it's the most classic cinematic score. Original song. The nominees are Be Alive from King Richard, Dos Oruguitas from Encanto, Down to Joy from Belfast, No Time to Die from No Time to Die, and Somehow You Do from Four Good Days. Most years, this tends to be one of the most frustrating categories for me. Not so much because of the actual songs, but more so because of the nomination criteria. It's just always bothered me that closing credit songs can be nominated. We do still have a few of those this year, but we have more songs actually featured in the films than normal, so that's nice. But we still end up with kind of an odd selection here. Of the nominees, Van Morrison most closely aligns with my musical tastes, and I do like Down to Joy, but I've actually gotta choose No Time to Die for my personal pick. It's not up there as one of my favorite Bond songs, but it's grown on me over the now 2 years since its release. As far as the actual winner, you would think that an Encanto song would be the shoo-in, given how pervasive that film's music has been over the last few months. But Dos Oruguitas? Of all the Encanto songs, that's the one that gets picked? I mean, I guess it still has a chance, but I think Billie Eilish is gonna score the Oscar with No Time to Die. I mean, it's tough to beat a Bond theme song. Actress in a leading role. The nominees are Jessica Chastain in The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman in The Lost Daughter, Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers, Nicole Kidman in Being the Ricardos, and Kristen Stewart in Spencer. So, unlike with the supporting actress category, I actually think the nominees here are pretty strong across the board. I think they all gave good performances, and you can make a case for any of them to win. For me, though, there were two who really stood out. I think Penelope Cruz did a great job in Parallel Mothers, but my personal pick has gotta go to Kristen Stewart. She gave such an intense performance. It was heavy and kind of anxiety inducing to watch, so I can only imagine what she had to put into actually performing it. Predicting the winner here in this category is a little tough, because, like I said, you could make a case for all five of these women. Jessica Chastain might be the safer pick here, but I'm sticking with my gut and going with Kristen Stewart for the win. Actor in a leading role. The nominees are Javier Bardem in Being the Ricardos, Benedict Cumberbatch in The Power of the Dog, Andrew Garfield in Tick Tick Boom, Will Smith in King Richard, and Denzel Washington in The Tragedy of Macbeth. I don't know why, but it seems like the Best Actor and Best Actress categories trade off each year in terms of impressiveness for me. I usually find one pretty decent and the other kind of underwhelming. And as you just saw, I thought the nominees for Best Actress were pretty decent. So, nobody here was bad, but I gotta say, I didn't love any of these performances. For my personal pick, I'm gonna go with Will Smith, because he had an interesting range with that performance. As far as the actual winner, I think it's a bit of a toss-up between Smith, Cumberbatch, and Garfield. I'm gonna pick Will Smith here, but it really could go any way. Best Picture. The nominees are Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. Okay, so the category everybody's been waiting for. I'll admit that I don't always agree with the nominees for Best Picture, but with 10 options, there's usually a handful that I truly enjoy each year, even if they aren't the frontrunners. This year, I can honestly say that there's only one nominee that I loved, and only another two or three that I would say I liked. The rest were mostly just okay to me. So that makes my personal pick pretty easy. Coda. This movie really surprised me. It wasn't what I expected at all, but I really loved its story and its balance of humor and heart. I think it has a very outside chance of actually winning, though. It would be awesome, but I doubt it. Instead, I think it's gonna be basically a two-way race between Belfast and The Power of the Dog. It's gonna be a close one, but I've gotta give the slight edge to The Power of the Dog, especially since I think Jane Campion is also gonna win Best Director. Alright, so there you have it. My picks and predictions for the 94th Academy Awards. These were just my thoughts on the likely outcome of this year's Oscars, but I'd love to hear what your predictions are too. So be sure to post them in the comments below. I've already reviewed some of these movies, so I've put links to those videos in the description below, and you can also check those out if you want some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. And if you're interested in buying any of these Oscar-nominated movies, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Also, be sure to check back right after the Oscars to see how I did with my predictions in my final Oscar video of the year. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.